Despite the bad press he's been getting over the last few weeks, it's always a mistake to underestimate Narendra Modi. He is easily the most popular politician in India. Yes, even now. And he's certainly the shrewdest. He's always 3 or 4 steps ahead of the opposition. Well, okay, not over the last 3 weeks maybe, but generally that's his record. And not only is he ahead of everyone, he's also mysterious. Nobody really knows what he's thinking. Nobody's really close to him. Nobody's aware of his inner thoughts. Nobody knows what he's going to do. Do we know who he's going to appoint to the cabinet, who he made president, who he's going to get rid of? Do we know why he dropped people? We never know. That is the nature of Mr. Modi. He's a very shrewd politician and one who always takes you by surprise. What you can tell, however, even if you can't tell what Mr. Modi is thinking, is how his supporters are reacting. And you can observe from the outside what his relationship is with the other branches of government, the civil service, or more relevantly, the judiciary and the Supreme Court in particular. Now, Mr. Modi's key support base has always been the middle class. And it's interesting now that that's one base that is discontented, that's frustrated, that's unhappy. Why is it unhappy? Well, let's look at it in perspective. It's a caricature, it's a liberal caricature to say that middle class voters who went with Mr. Modi are communal, they're bigots, etc. Well, maybe some are. But basically for the middle class, it wasn't the Hindu agenda alone that appealed. It was the promise of creating a new India. It was the promise of creating an India in which salaried professionals, honest people would be rewarded. They would play an equal role in, for want of a better term, nation building. Now that class, I think, by the end of Mr. Modi's second term, was beginning to feel a little frustrated. It was beginning to feel we've had 10 years of this. When are we really going to get something? It got more frustrated, I think, when the election campaign got underway. People had expected that Mr. Modi would say, I've achieved this much, but we've only come halfway. You guys have worked very hard. We'll do this. You will be enriched in this way. We will build a better India together. He did none of that. He may have said 1 or 2 things that pleased the middle class, but basically his campaign was attack, attack, attack. The tone of his campaign was relentlessly attacking. Now, the BJP has said often, it's asserted again and again, that the Congress is finished. It's not even a factor. We don't even think about them. Somehow nobody sent Narendra Modi this memo. So throughout the campaign, he kept attacking the Congress, even while his party was telling us it was irrelevant. He attacked the Congress's manifesto. He caricatured its promises. He told us that if the Congress was going to come to power, it was, as you well know, snatch the Mangal Sutras off the necks of Hindu women. It was going to confiscate the buffaloes of poor Hindu farmers, and it was going to take all of this and give this to Muslims who were the Congress's vote bank. Now, I think this was not what the middle class wanted to hear. They had had enough of communalism, enough of Hindu-Muslim. They wanted something concrete. I mean, yes, there was a time when this kind of appeal could have worked, but that time has long gone. And yet, Mr. Modi gave them nothing. He gave them nothing to look forward to. And you can see the results in the composition of the new parliament. Yes, the BJP is still the largest single party, but the middle class, which Mr. Modi thought he had all wrapped up, didn't really vote for him the way he thought. The party didn't even get a majority. Mr. Modi, I now thought, would now use this as an opportunity to win back the support of the middle class, his traditional constituency. His best chance, I thought, would be the budget. I expected, and I'm not alone in this, many people said this, we expected a soft budget, a budget that would reward his supporters, would reward the middle class. No, we didn't get anything like that. The middle class got nothing like that. We got a budget that, rather than making things easier for the middle class with all kinds of ill-advised changes to the capital gains mechanism, actually made life tougher. There was a huge middle class outcry. People who'd supported the BJP for the last 10 years went on social media to complain about what was happening. And I said he will recognize that he's losing this constituency. I said to myself, he will do something to win them back. He did nothing. When a few changes were made, a few tweaks to the taxation laws, they were so small, so insignificant, made so grudgingly and so half-heartedly that it did nothing to take away the middle class anger. There was another factor to the middle class anger, which I don't think Mr. Modi realizes, which is that if you say the middle class is spoiled, it doesn't care about the poor, that's fine. But that's not what the middle class is complaining about. The middle class is quite happy for the poor to be helped. The middle class was complaining about the image this government has, that it's in the hands of oligarchs, that it exists only to help rich people, that it has turned its back on salaried people. This at least is the allegation the Congress has leveled, and Mr. Modi's had many opportunities to deny this, to show that it's not true. In fact, not that much has happened that indicates that. We've seen recent controversies about SEBI. We've seen recent examples of the government favoring oligarchs over other people. He doesn't seem to care if people think that his government is a government of the rich, for the rich, by the newly rich. He doesn't seem to care. He seems quite happy with that. Obviously, middle-class people are going to be unhappy. They're going to say, if you don't think of us, why are you thinking of your rich pals? If you've been on social media recently, you'll find one factor that appears again and again in tweets. Apparently, if you take income tax collections, and income tax is mostly paid by the middle class, which is what, 3% of India, and we slave and we pay GST and we pay income tax, and we lose large chunks of our income. If you take those collections and you compare to them corporation tax collections of the entire Indian corporate sector, which is vast and prosperous, the middle class has ended up paying more in income tax than the fat cats have paid in corporation tax. Now, you can probably offer economic agreements, you can probably offer economic arguments for this, but nobody's bothered. And so that sense of middle class grievance grows. There is that sense that, you're a government of fat cats, what's in it for me? We supported you, we wanted so much, you're giving us nothing. When you have that situation, once the middle class is a little disillusioned, it starts looking at everything else. Stuff that it's ignored for so many years suddenly becomes significant. It begins asking, what's with these new statues you're erecting? They fall, even though you just erected them at great expense. They say, what's with these new bridges and these new roads? They're already cracking. What is it with the trains, which you keep telling us is your great success? Every day almost, there's a derailment or an accident. Where is the foreign policy of India headed? You told us you were a foreign policy genius, but you've made an enemy out of, except for Bhutan, every single country in our neighborhood. So where are these successes? Now, these are not new points. You could have made these at some stage in the last term, but people didn't make them because they still had hope in Mr. Modi. Once that hope begins to evaporate, then the questions begin to be raised. And there's one other key issue. One thing that the government has done, which no other government has done to this extent, is arrested or persecuted the opposition. It's been able to do this by using laws like PMLA, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and it has been able to put them in jail. There isn't necessarily any evidence. In many cases, such as the Delhi liquor scam, the evidence is this. They arrested some guys and they said, you're responsible for the liquor scam. Those guys said, no, we will point the finger at politicians. And the government said, fine, you're pardoned. On the basis of these statements, this testimony from people who've been pardoned, who were once accused, the government has gone ahead and arrested politicians, opponents of the regime. There isn't that much independent evidence. It's all this kind of testimony. And there isn't, it's been a long time now, there isn't any move to start a trial. It's enough to keep people in jail. For a long time, I think during the last election, this should have been an issue. It wasn't. People didn't seem to care. Why didn't they care? Well, I think the middle class believes that all politicians are crooks anyhow. So even if these guys are in jail, they must be crooks. But once the disillusionment sets in, you start asking questions. You start saying, okay, politicians are crooks, but are there no crooks in the BJP? How come you're only arresting opposition people? They say you told us that so-and-so was a racketeer, that so-and-so was a criminal. But hey, they've joined the BJP and now you're saying they're fine. We're going to make them deputy chief minister. We're going to do this with them. We're going to do that with them. So these are awkward questions for the government to answer. They're made more awkward, I think, by the deterioration in the government's relationship with an important arm of government, important institution of how India has run, the judiciary. I think the judiciary has always been uncomfortable with the government's tendency to lock people up and fight the idea of giving them bail. It's got away with this so far because the lower judiciary goes along with what the government says. A few high court judges have said something about the principle of liberty. In return, they've been trolled and attacked. So generally, you've got to go to the Supreme Court to get something like bail, even if there's not much evidence against you. And that process can take months. So people who are probably innocent, they've certainly not been convicted of any crime, spend months, years even in jail without any real evidence except for these testimonies being produced. Finally, the Supreme Court has said enough is enough. Over the last couple of days, as you must have read, it has attacked the government again and again. It said, how can you arrest people based on approver testimonies? It has said statements made to the police, even under PMLA, are not necessarily admissible in court. It has said that even under PMLA, you cannot deny people their liberty. So one by one, it's already happening. It happened with Kavita. One by one, the courts are going to let out these people who've been arrested by the government. On the whole, this has been welcomed by the middle class, which I think is another slap in the face of the government. And it's also a problem because one reason the government has managed to get people to change sides, one reason it's been able to intimidate its critics, is the threat that we will lock you up. Yeah, maybe you'll get bail, but you'll be in jail for a year, right? That may not be true any longer. If the Supreme Court's views are taken seriously, and they will be, if the lower courts, even the high courts, start listening to what the judges are saying, the judges have been very scathing about high court judgments denying bail. If that happens, then the government's ability to just lock people up will go. So what do you have now? You have a government that's lost one of its weapons, the ability to threaten, intimidate, and lock people up. You have a government that's lost the middle class, which is its crucial support base. No, not that Mr. Modi seems to think so. And you have a government that's under huge attack from all over, from foreign institutions, from the media, the global media, from the Congress party, other opposition parties, for its willingness to bend the rules of the system to benefit a few oligarchs. It's not a great situation for any government to be in. Obviously, things are changing. How is it going to find its way out? Honestly, I don't know. Mr. Modi is a very, very shrewd politician. He must have thought about this. He must see what's happening. He must have a strategy. But for the life of me, I don't know what that strategy is. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out.